let's come back to West Africa, where the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or LCCI, has committed a plan by the Central Bank of Nigeria to repatriate $200 billion from non-oil exports in the next 3 to 5 years and help the country achieve a more diversified revenue source. In a statement released on Monday, the LCCI said the race to $200 billion in FX repatriation requires the right policies, critical export infrastructure, international trade diplomacy, and adequate funding to achieve the desired results within the stipulated period. The Chamber, however, says there is an urgent need to improve the export infrastructure at the ports, create more digital platforms to reduce the human interface for exports and formulate the right policies. They ask the government to accelerate the plan to build more domestic export warehouses by the Nigerian Export Promotion Council. So let's get on the conversation. In a related development, the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise, that's the Cppe, also released a statement. According to MUDA YUSUF, who is the Chief Executive Officer, they say the central bank plans to stop selling foreign currencies to banks or commercial banks by the end of this year. It needs to be revisited. MUDA YUSUF joins me live now on the show. Good evening, sir. Thanks for making it despite the snarl vehicular traffic in the city. What do you make of this announcement, by the way, by the central bank? And I was reading the last part of the statement issued by your center.
Well, already the statement has created some level of panic in the economy, a lot of anxiety. And if it happens the way the CBN had announced, we expect the shock on the economy to be very profound. Shocks from the point of view of further depreciation in the exchange rates, further volatility in the foreign exchange market, another round of very high, spike in inflation, and general adverse effects on the on investors' confidence. It's going to also lead to a lot of business disruptions, because the CBN currently warehouses a large chunk of the inflows of forex into this economy. And if that is the case, you cannot have a situation where a player that is playing such a major role in terms of warehousing the inflows now staying away from the market. The gap that will create, the void that it creates in the market, will be very difficult to fill. And it's going to lead to a lot of dislocations in the economy. Even as we speak, that mere announcement alone has transmitted a whole lot of uncertainty in the system. Panic. That's even stands of people are now rushing to quickly stock dollars because of the anticipated disruptions that this will cause. So although the full details of the policy is yet to be announced, the CBN governor announced it possibly just off the cuff. It wasn't part of the main statement that was released. But nonetheless, it's an indication or a signal of what the CBN plans to do.
But what is
such a major policy?
Yes. What is the best global practice also when it comes to central banks selling foreign exchange to banks?
Normally, players interface with the market, not necessarily with the central bank. But you must have a market that is truly a market. A market whose rate is market-driven, so that there be no question of rationing or allocation and all of that. Even though there could be some level of management, it's what we call managed float. The CBN can intervene, as and when necessary, depending on its capacity to do so. But there must be a market. So if the CBN wants to go that route, then we must ensure that the I&E window, first, is robust enough. Secondly, it has to be market-driven. Thirdly, there has to be a whole lot of transparency around it. Thirdly, all the major suppliers, all the major inflows must come through that market. And it must come at a market-driven rate. That is the only way that model can work. But for as long as the CBN is the custodian of a large chunk of the foreign exchange, it is impossible for the CBN to now exit with that chunk of foreign exchange and leave that, I mean, the whole system will just collapse because the market is still not deep enough because of all the challenges of policy, structural, but particularly policy issues. If you had a very deep and robust R&E window that is market-driven, then we can be talking about the CBN exiting the space.
So if we're going to have if we're going to have a robust R&E window, who's going to fund it, by the way?
No, the economy is still attracting inflows. We have a whole lot of channels through which inflows are coming.
But would that be enough? Would that be enough to impact the industrial manufacturing sector that depends on the central bank for FX supply?
Even as we speak, it's not enough. You know the crisis that the industrialists are facing in the forex market. But if you have a market-driven system, gradually the rates will be flexible, and the capacity of the economy to attract a lot more inflows is going to increase. Because one of the challenges we have now is that the rate in the window, in the R&E window, is not a market-reflective rate. So a lot of inflows that normally should have come in, independent of oil, are not coming in. So that is why the CBN is struggling with a lot of demand management intervention. But the good news is that the CBN is now looking at the supply side, which is a welcome development. That is what this RT200 is all about. But for that to also work, we need to ensure that the inflows that are coming from non-oil exports are also coming at market rates. Because I can tell you, as we speak, the exporters are complaining a whole lot about the fact that they are being compelled to exchange their proceeds at the official rates, which is like penalizing them. Because they know that the parallel market rate is about 570 or more. The official window is 416. So how do we encourage them to bring in the forex? So the pricing mechanism is a major issue. Then in addition to that, we must ensure that we deal with the structural issues. Because if you want to grow the non-oil export sector, it is not only about funding. Funding is a critical part of it, no doubt. But we need to deal with the structural issues. You know, they need power. The entire value chain has for a lot of issues that are impacted by the structural environment. And the fiscal authorities have a much bigger role to play in that space. So that is why we are saying we need to strengthen collaboration between the monetary and the fiscal authorities.
Well said.
Money is important, but the environment is also very critical.
Yeah, money is important, but money is not everything. Thank you so much, MUDA YUSUF, the Chief Executive Officer at the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Quite a very important issue we're touching on. The conversation, of course, definitely is not over yet. We'll be waiting for further clarity from the Central Bank on how to move on the FX. Thank you so much. Do have a pleasant evening. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.